Forced to work from home by your employer? Laid off or feeling depressed at home? Do you want to make money working from anywhere? We'll show you how to do it from your couch. It's time for another episode of the Work From Home Show. Coming to you from their homes in Austin, Texas and Tampa, Florida, here are your hosts, Adam and Naresh.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Work From Home Show. I'm Naresh Vissa with Adam Schrader, and on the line today we have another awesome guest, like we do every week, and his name is Dr. Stephen G. Post. That's Stephen Post. He's the professor of Preventive Medicine and the founding director of the Center for Medical Humanities, Compassionate Care, and Bioethics at Stony Brook University. He's also the founder and director of the Institute for Research on Unlimited Love. He has promoted the idea of give and live better across the globe, which is the main reason why I thought we should bring him on our show, because I think that mantra is an important give and live better, an important way to live as our homies and homegirls and home trans and homeboys as they continue to work from home. Funding over 50 scientific studies at the nation's top universities, as well as conducting his own research, Stephen is considered the go-to guy with his uplifting message that when we contribute to the lives of others, give meaningfully to them, and live by the golden rule, we are generally happier, healthier, resilient, creative, hopeful, and successful. And I certainly agree with that message. His book, The Moral Challenge of Alzheimer's Disease, Ethical Issues from Diagnosis to Dying, was designated a medical classic of the century by the British Medical Journal. And he is the author of the new book, Religion and Medicine, A History of the Encounter Between Humanity's Two Greatest Institutions. Dr. Stephen G. Post, welcome to the Work From Home Show.
Well, thanks, Naresh. It's nice to be here, and Adam, too.
Yeah, and that's quite a bio and background that you have. And let's first start, since most of our listeners work from home or want to gain the independence to work and make money from home. Why is it important for our work from homers? Why is it important to pursue spiritual values such as love, compassion, and generosity, and not just materialism?
That's a big question. You're talking about what I would call relational spirituality. Whenever I hear things like gratitude, kindness, forgiveness, and so forth, I think about enhanced human interactions. And so those are spiritual values between human beings, and they're very important with regard to thriving and flourishing. We have ample studies pointing out that people who express gratitude tend to be, as a result, a bit happier and more fulfilled. We have studies that indicate that people who are more forgiving and who are able to learn how to forgive, and there's a lot to learn about that, they tend to be less stressed. They tend to be healthier, both mentally and physically. They don't get gobbled up in that negative vortex of bitterness and hostility that is like acid on metal, both with regard to mental and physical health. So these things are important. Kindness, try a little kindness. Everybody knows what that is, a little gentle curiosity about somebody. Don't just walk past them in a rush and ignore them or treat them like objects, but show just a little interest in them. How's it going? How's the family? And so forth. That's also very good for them, and it's very good for you, and it's good for building relationships. So all these actions are helpful and healthy, and they lead to greater flourishing for sure. They build community. They build mutual support. They build reputational gains, actually, but that's just a secondary thing. The main issue is just treat people kindly. I like to say it's better to be always kind than always right. My wife tells me that.
Nice. Now, when you talk about people practicing gratitude, are you talking about like doing the gratitude journals, or how?
Well,
what do you mean by that exactly?
Well, gratitude can be expressed in so many different ways, but you're absolutely correct. Bob Emmons, a wonderful social scientist at the University of California in Davis, did a lot of studies on adolescence. And he did find out quite conclusively that if teenagers would just take, say, a half an hour once a week to write down in a journal the things that they are most thankful for or grateful for, that they tend, after a 6-week period, to be noticeably happier, less frustrated, less affected by disappointment. So they tend to do a little better when they put their mind on the things that they can be thankful for. And, that's just, I guess, common sense. Gets the mind off the problems of the self and the things that we lack, the things that we want, and just allows us to sort of zone in on the simple things that we do have and can appreciate. So the old Shaker hymn, "'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free," there's something to that.
You've dedicated your life to pursuing kind of love and compassion, and like you said, being nice to other people. What does your research tell you about kind of the impact scientifically and medically, and how come modern science and medicine doesn't focus on these issues?
Well, the medical model, as you know, Naresh, it's very biological, and doesn't necessarily take seriously the ways in which emotion and behavior can actually impact health, which obviously they can. So, there are a lot of good researchers now who study hope, for example, medical researchers. Jerome Groopman up at Harvard wrote a book called The Anatomy of Hope. A lot of people have noted that hope can make a difference. Surgeons typically are reluctant to perform surgery if they don't think that a patient is adequately hopeful. We know that patients tend to wait to die in hospitals until holidays or opportunities to get together with loved ones for a birthday. So they're hoping for something, and that's affecting their biology. So we know that works. We can talk about it now pretty skillfully. We know what parts of the brain are involved and what kinds of hormones are active. So hope, it's not a miracle. It's not like, going to change everything under the sun, but a little hope is a pretty healthy thing. And I don't mean just optimism. Optimism's kind of just a bit of a smiliness despite the obstacles. But hope tends to be realistic. We work with patients and hope all the time and make observations, and they can be hopeful. They can be realistic. You don't want to have false hope. You want to be able to fine-tune hope in the context of reality, not fantasy. But yeah, hope is important. Kindness is incredibly important. Compassionate care, helping others, is great for patients. It helps them to deal with illnesses. They tend to be more adherent to treatments for chronic conditions like diabetes and other conditions as well. So if you can treat them with compassion, they tend to do better. But also the doctors And the nurses, as long as they keep this within some limits and don't get completely fatigued, they tend to find a lot more meaning in their work, and they're a lot happier and healthier if they can feel that they're providing the kind of care that they really want to.
Well, when you talk about hope for what? Can you give examples? Like, what should our listeners be hoping for?
Well, it depends on what the condition is medically, but hope is, in the broadest sense, it's the conviction that there is a path to a better future. Now, hope is a contrasting condition to what's called learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is when you're just so pessimistic that you can't even get off the floor. And some people have been humiliated, and they've been maltreated. They've been de-dignified, I like to say. So they really don't see much hope. But we should be hoping. We should be hoping to flourish. We should be hoping to realize what we can do for ourselves and for others with our unique gifts and talents. And everybody, without exception, has those unique gifts and talents. Now, they may have been, again, the victims of adverse childhood experiences. They may have had difficult obstacles in life, but nevertheless, however buried, everybody has these talents, and they can use those talents best when they contribute to the lives of others, and they will come into flourishing. They will become happier, and they will become more gratified and look back on their lives with joy.
Now, one of the things you talked about there was compassion, and we as a society tend to kind of look down sometimes on those who have compassion and those who are trying to better themselves through kind of sometimes non-medical ways. Like, for example, my wife and I both think that pretty much everybody in America and everybody in the world could do with some kind of therapy, whether in some form or another, some counseling. But as a society, we tend to look down on them and think, oh, you're weak because you do that. How can we start changing that narrative to where people take the time to actually do like self-care?
Oh, absolutely. So listen, at least one very dominant dimension of our culture is self-reliance, complete independence. I don't do nothing for nothing, as it was said to me in New York not too long ago. But the bottom line, of course, is that we're not that independent. When you look at people, we come into the world born and completely dependent, more so than any other species, for a long period of time. When we fall ill, we are dependent and vulnerable. When we grow old, we're typically dependent and vulnerable, and increasingly so as we near the end. So the bottom line is that really descriptively, the human condition is one of interdependence and vulnerability and caring for others. So we try to deceive ourselves into thinking that that's not the ultimate reality. And there is something to independence and self-reliance, don't get me wrong, but it's not the ultimate condition that we are in. And I think that everybody, even if they don't like to admit it, everybody needs to have the support of others. We did a study of widows and widowers who were happily married for lengthy periods of time. And then, one or the other passes away. The one who goes on living typically has a period of grief and bereavement. Again, unless it was a really lousy marriage, which can happen. But we tried to get couples who were self-describing as well married and happy and loving one another. So for those couples, they go through a period of difficulty, of understandable sadness. And they get through that more quickly and also in a more enduring fashion if they can self-report that they've been helping others in the neighborhood, in some organization or another, in a faith community, whatever it might be, just on the block. And so we published this article in a pretty good journal, and I got a call from the New York Society of Widows and Widowers. There is such a thing, believe it or not. And they were having their annual conference in the Manhattan Marriott, by the way, which is now closed down due to this COVID thing for good. But it's a big conference hotel, and a couple thousand people there. So I gave this talk. I thought it went all right. And then there was time for Q&A, and there was a guy in the back of this room, and he was waving his hands frantically, and he screamed out. And I basically my argument was that we've shown that people who can help others can navigate and get through these difficult times in life more quickly and in a more lasting fashion. He looked at me and he said, "I don't care what you say, buddy. I don't do nothing for nothing." And see, he was the victim of the idea, the ideology, that in fact, if you're not getting a payback, if you're not calculating reciprocal gains, you're just a sucker, to use the word, and a fool. But that's not true, because there are a lot of internal benefits. We know that people who volunteer do better with disappointments and loss. They're happier. They feel more physically robust. They have deeper friendships. They sleep better. A whole lot of things. And these are not because they're calculating payback, but it's just because when you get into that frame of mind, life is better for you.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Post. Dr. Post is the Director of Preventive Medicine and the founding Director of the Center for Medical Humanities, Compassionate Care, and Bioethics at Stony Brook University. He is the author of the new book, Religion and Medicine, A History of the Encounter Between Humanity's Two Greatest Institutions. Go check him out at StephenGPost.com. That's StephenGPost.com. Or go to UnlimitedLoveInstitute.org. That's UnlimitedLoveInstitute.org. You can check us out, workfromhomeshow.com. That's workfromhomeshow.com. If you have any questions, comments, anybody you think we should interview, send them over to us, hello@workfromhomeshow.com. That's hello@workfromhomeshow.com. And until next week, keep on working from home.